I did not expect my son to humiliate me in front of hundreds of people. Not on Christmas. Not in a room filled with millionaires, flashing cameras, and people applauding his success. But the moment he hugged me and said those words, loud enough for everyone to hear, the entire ballroom went silent inside my head. Enjoying the $5,000 a month, Dad. People around us laughed. Some nodded with admiration. To them, it sounded like generosity. To me, it felt like something breaking. In that moment, I realized something painful. The boy I once carried on my shoulders had grown into a man who believed he had carried me. What he didn't know was that before that night ended, something would happen that would change both of our lives forever. But to understand how a father becomes a charity case in his own son's story, you first need to know who I am. Welcome to my YouTube channel Whisper Stories, where silence speaks. My name is Daniel, and I am 60 years old. At 60, a man believes he has already lived through the hardest lessons life can offer. You think you understand pride, loss, love, and disappointment. You believe that after raising a child, sacrificing years of sleep, dreams, and comfort for them, there are no surprises left in the story of fatherhood. You believe that if you gave your son everything you had, he would at least remember who helped him become the man he is. I believed that too. I was wrong. The Christmas party where everything changed was held in the largest ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel. The place glittered with golden lights and crystal chandeliers. A massive Christmas tree stood in the center, decorated with silver ribbons and ornaments that looked like they cost more than my old car. People laughed loudly, holding glasses of champagne, expensive suits, designer dresses, watches that could pay for a small house. And there I was, standing quietly near the dessert table, wearing the only suit I owned. It was old but clean. My wife had bought it for me 15 years ago, before she passed away. I had been invited as a guest. Not as someone important. Just as someone who was tolerated. The party was hosted by my son. My son, Ethan. At 32, Ethan had become what people called a self-made millionaire. His technology company had exploded in success. Investors adored him. Magazines called him a visionary. People lined up just to shake his hand. But when those articles talked about his journey, there was something they never mentioned. They never mentioned the man who worked 3 jobs so Ethan could attend university. They never mentioned the father who sold his old truck to pay Ethan's tuition. They never mentioned the nights I went to sleep hungry so my son wouldn't have to. They never mentioned me. A waiter passed by and offered me champagne. I politely refused. Not because I didn't want it, but because I felt out of place. Everyone around me belonged to Ethan's world. Entrepreneurs, investors, famous influencers, young millionaires who talked about business deals the way farmers talk about the weather. I was just Daniel, a retired electrician, 60 years old, and invisible. Are you enjoying the party, sir? The voice belonged to a young woman standing beside me. She wore a beautiful red dress and held a microphone. I'm doing my best, I said with a small smile. She laughed politely and walked away. Moments later, music began to play and people gathered near the stage. A spotlight turned on. And then my son walked up. Tall, confident, perfectly dressed. The room exploded with applause. Ladies and gentlemen, he said into the microphone, thank you for coming to celebrate another incredible year. More applause. He spoke about his company's growth, new partnerships, global expansion. I listened quietly. Proud. Despite everything, a father's pride is stubborn. It survives longer than it should. After his speech, Ethan stepped off the stage and began greeting guests. People surrounded him instantly. Everyone wanted a moment with the young millionaire. I stayed where I was. I didn't want to embarrass him. Over the past few years, Ethan had slowly built distance between us. It started small. Fewer phone calls, shorter visits, then holidays spent with important business partners. Eventually, I realized something painful. My son was slowly editing me out of his life. I was about to leave when I heard his voice. "Dad." I turned. Ethan was walking toward me through the crowd. People noticed. Some whispered. The Millionaire CEO was approaching the old man near the dessert table. He smiled widely and wrapped his arms around me in a hug. For a moment, my heart filled with warmth. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe my son still remembered. Then he said something loudly enough for everyone around us to hear. "Enjoying the $5,000 a month, Dad." The words landed like ice. The nearby guests laughed softly. Someone whispered, "Wow, that's generous." Another said, "Lucky father." I forced a smile. "Yes," I said quietly, "thank you." Ethan patted my shoulder. "You deserve it," he said casually. Then he turned back to his guests and walked away. Just like that. But something inside me had cracked. Because the way he said it was not kindness. It was display. A performance. Like I was a charity project. Like he had placed me on a pedestal labeled, "My generous act." I stood there for a long moment, staring at the Christmas tree lights. $5,000 a month. That was the amount Ethan had insisted on sending me after I retired. At first, I refused. But he said, "Dad, it's nothing for me." Eventually, I accepted. Not because I needed charity, but because I thought it meant he cared. Now I understood. It was not support. It was control. I quietly walked toward the exit. No one noticed. Except one person. An older man standing near the coat rack. He looked at me and said gently, "Leaving already?" "Yes," I said. "Too loud for me." He nodded. "Are you Daniel?" I blinked. "Yes." He extended his hand. "I'm Mr. Howard, one of Ethan's early investors." We shook hands. Then he said something unexpected. "I've been wanting to meet you." We sat down in a quiet corner of the lobby. Mr. Howard studied me carefully. "You raised him well," he said. I gave a small laugh. "I tried." He leaned back. "You know," he continued, "Ethan talks about his business mentors all the time." I nodded. "But he never talks about you." The words strung. I didn't reply. Mr. Howard sighed. "Which is strange," he added, "because the first time I invested in his company, he told me the entire idea came from something you once said." My eyebrows lifted. "What?" "Yes," Mr. Howard said. "He told me you used to say, if you solve real problems for people, money will eventually follow." I froze. Because I did say that. Many times. When Ethan was young. When we talked about life while fixing old electronics in the garage. Mr. Howard smiled gently. "Your son built a company on that philosophy." I looked down at my hands. And for the first time that night, something inside me shifted. Before I left, Mr. Howard said something that stayed with me. "Success sometimes makes people forget their roots," he said. "But life has a way of reminding them." 3 months passed. Winter faded into early spring. My life was quiet again. Small house. Morning walks. Books. Simple meals. The $5,000 still arrived every month. I used most of it to support a local community center. Children there needed books and computers. Helping them felt better than keeping the money. One afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID surprised me. "Ethan." "Dad," he said quickly. "Can you come to the office?" His voice sounded different. Tense. "Why?" I asked. "I need your help." When I arrived, Ethan's office looked very different from the Christmas party version. The confident millionaire was gone. In his place sat a tired man with dark circles under his eyes. "What happened?" I asked. He rubbed his face. "The company is in trouble. A major investor had pulled out. Stock prices were falling. Employees were panicking. Ethan had built something incredible. But he had grown too fast. And now the structure was cracking." For the next hour, he explained the situation. I listened quietly. When he finished, he looked at me helplessly. "I don't know what to do." I leaned back in my chair. "Do you remember what I used to tell you in the garage?" I asked. He looked confused. "What?" "If you solve real problems." He finished the sentence slowly. "Money will follow." I nodded. "Stop chasing investors," I said. "Start helping your customers again." Over the next weeks, Ethan began making changes. Cutting unnecessary projects. Focusing on real solutions. Listening to employees. Gradually, things improved. The company stabilized. Customers returned. And the storm passed. One evening, Ethan came to my house. Not the office. Not a restaurant. My small living room. He sat across from me silently for a long time. Finally, he said something I had waited years to hear. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't speak." He continued. "At the Christmas party, the way I spoke to you." His voice cracked. I was showing off. I nodded slowly. "Yes." Tears filled his eyes. "I forgot you helped me become who I am." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked quietly, "Why didn't you say anything?" I smiled gently. Because sometimes silence teaches better than anger. That night we ate dinner together. Simple food. Just like old times. Before he left, Ethan hugged me again. This time, there was no audience. No applause. No performance. Just a son hugging his father. A week later, the monthly transfer arrived again. $5,000. But this time, Ethan sent a message with it. Not charity, gratitude. I smiled. Moral of the story. Success can make people believe they climbed the mountain alone. But every great journey begins with someone who carried you when you were too small to walk. Money can impress the world. But respect is what truly honors those who helped you rise. And the greatest wealth a man can have at 60 is not money. It is hearing his child finally say, "Thank you, Dad."